Hello and welcome to another New Game Plus. This is round 2 of Itchmas. So hopefully you tuned in with us last year. But once again, we've got our... What was that? What's Rick's just laughing at me? What's going on
I'm
here?
not laughing at you. Hey, this speaks to my brain. My head just went, tuned in. It's the second year we've done it.
Oh, dear God. Well, you know who our guest is.
You stopped and I had no choice. I was going to let it roll. We're here now.
I'm kind of glad we're here. Well, as you can tell, our guest this time around is Dune once again to talk with us all about the lovely Itchmas games. Last year we had you do this. Do you mind telling us what is Itchmas, Dune? What is this thing?
Not at all. And I guess my bribes must be working because I think this is like the third time I've been on the pod. So I feel, I feel quite lucky to be among those. What is Itchmas? Well, this is a community event that we do on How Long to Beat, the website, community, and the Discord. And the idea is just to play on the famous Christmas song, the 12 Days of Christmas, the partridge in a pear tree and all that stuff. Instead of that, we play free, typically short games on itch.io all together, and we nominate a bunch and we vote on them to see which ones actually will get played. The top 12 games are what we are supposed to play, but we tend to have some ties, so we end up playing more. And we reveal the winners one day at a time, kind of like an advent calendar, I guess, just to add some of the suspense. And so it's just so much fun to wait for the reveal of the day's new game and then play together and then see everybody, making their thoughts. So it's just a kind of fun special event that we like to do around Christmas time.
Nice. Yeah, somehow, we were talking about this before, it ended up being exactly 15 games, like last year was 15 games. So we're an indecisive group, but that's just because there's so many good games for us to try.
Yeah, but I'm sticking to the 12 in the name because it's just got to stay. What it actually ends up being in practice, that's fine. But it's not going to change to the 15 games of Itchmas because sure enough, then it's going to be 16 or 14 or 23.
We've got to draw the line somewhere, goddammit.
Yeah, it's fixed at 12.
Also,
12 plus.
This is a totally off tangent, but this is the most Canadian thing right now. So I'm being double bombarded as we just started recording with some motherfucker vacuuming in my hallway and a snowblower going on outside. God damn it.
But neither of them stopped to apologize before they got going.
No, but if I walked out, they would say sorry. I promise. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we'll change that." That's just how they roll.
Is the Canadianness about that just the fact that it's snowblower and no related stuff? Okay.
The other part.
So what's the story with your? What about the Christmas tree still up in the background? Is that a Canadian thing too, or is that just an Alex thing?
That's more just me being like, you know what? January here is so depressed. It's so depressing here because it's just so snowy and there's nothing to look forward to. So my partner and I were like, we're not taking that goddamn tree down. Not for a while. It's staying up until it is just absolutely inappropriate, which I don't know, end of January, maybe we'll see.
So you hadn't been looking forward to recording this particular podcast with friend of the show.
That's why I have the tree up.
Seriously.
Incredible.
Because this is a Christmas thing. Shut up. That's what
I
meant.
What? Actually, this is an Christmas thing.
That's exactly what this was. No one else could say otherwise. That being
said,
that
thing where you have an argument and you remember the perfect retort just a little bit too late.
Yeah, god damn it. I was so close. Well, why don't we move on then to the first game in the list, and that was Dead Estate Classic, which I think we started off pretty strong. I think it has a Steam release that cleaned up some stuff within it, but it's like this isometric roguelike game where although I did have a complaint about this game that I talked about on the pod, but roguelike isometric perspective where you're just kind of going around shooting enemies, trying to get to the final boss. I think there was 3 levels in this one. I decently enjoyed it, but I did retire this one for a reason I'll talk about in a second.
Was this the one that you said there were flying enemies and you didn't know where the fuck they were because it was on isometric plane?
Yes, that is bingo.
I got soft locked because you couldn't hit them. I had to restart a couple times because of that. Yeah, in level 2, there was 3 full levels, and they were kind of randomly generated roguelike style. And then there was a 4th level that was just the final boss. and they didn't take too long to get through once you got the hang of it. But yeah, there was this enemy that would get stuck on the ceiling that you literally could not, hit to kill and progress. And then I got crashed out of the game a couple times. And I know some others had some technical issues. So for me, it was fun, good art, good music. The gameplay was nice, but just some of the rough around the edges-ness of it dropped its score a bit. But I still had it in my top 3 because it was good gameplay and good execution for the most part. Better than some of the other stuff that we had later.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the tricky thing with this one in particular is that there is a Steam release that is overwhelmingly positively rated, and it's hard to sink too much time into it knowing there's a far better version available. And that's where I landed ultimately on this one. I played a couple of runs briefly. I didn't dislike what I played, but I was like, I'd rather play the full release, which I didn't end up picking up, but I certainly intend to. So I didn't play a lot. I have to say that the problem I did find is that in the itch version at least, the UI is not laid out all that well. So I found there were instances because of the isometric viewpoint, there wasn't transparency in the top right corner. So I did find some things blocked from my vision. Playing there, when you look at screenshots on the Steam page, it looks like they've actually tidied that up entirely and spread it out such that it's better laid out. But that's the problem I remember having there. Definitely strong, and you can see sort of in the production values that there was a bit more about this one again than some of the games that came later.
Yeah, like it's one of the few that felt like I'm like, oh, this feels more like I'm playing a demo than just like an itch, like because I feel like there are a couple categories with itch games. There's like, oh yeah, this is like a experiment, a game jam kind of game, or just something for someone who's kind of fiddling around on their own time, and it's like fun but kind of there. And then this one, you're like, oh yeah, this is a game, right? Where you're like, this is, and again, I think that's also why I just kind of stopped playing after I hit that kind of annoying enemy, because I was also like, well, I enjoy this, and like knowing that, like you said, Rick, that there's a Steam release, it's like, well, I'll just go play it there later, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree with that, at least for my own self, because, well, first off, you got to go buy that release, and this is free, which the money isn't a huge factor, but it is a separate thing. And then, that main release, the Steam release in this case, is not part of Itchmas. I'm right here participating in Itchmas right now. It's the game of the day, it's maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Why not just play it through? That was just my opinion, man.
Yeah, that fucking flying enemies, it pissed me off so much. I was like, no. It's just like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's because I have like PTSD from some old isometric games I used to play that I can't remember what it was called, but there was like another one that I remember. Or maybe it's just me thinking about Zelda when they had the fucking bats in 3D. God, I hate it so much. But anyway, that's my own issue.
I was still happy that this was kind of like a prototype or something that got another release on Steam, because we didn't mention this yet on the recording, but we did a new sort of game within the game this year for Itchmas called Itchmas Bingo, where we picked some different funny kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff to put in your bingo card. And one of mine was, it's got some kind of release coming out on Steam or another store, which there were several games like that. So I was happy to see this one.
I love that. I wish I got in on it, but I noticed a little too late. Like once they had started releasing it, I was like, oh shit. But I do like that bingo idea.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's bingo cards filled up so fast. People have a good read on what itch is all about.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there were something like 30 games in the nomination pool, because the idea was you had to create your card, before the nominations were all voted on, so you didn't know what games were going to be selected, of course. But there was quite a few trends that you could find, and I mean, there's a lot of Game Boy games, Game Boy influenced games out there. There's a lot of VNs, and there's a lot of more experimental stuff, a lot of pixel art. So like you can see the trends when you look at the list, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely see those trends. Well, why don't we pop along then, so we don't overdo devastate. Yeah. But let's go to one that I actually really, really liked, and this almost made it onto my top 3, which is Hot Pop Panic. Paula, why don't you take this one away? Because I think you played this one, right?
Yeah, this is one of the few that I played, and in this game you have to you are invited by a friend to a dinner place where you pretty much can eat like anything all you want hot pot, and you have to cook your food, eat the food, and listen to your friend. And you have to listen to your friend in a way that they feel listened to and they don't discover that you're just here for the food. And you also have kind of a time limit, because if you run out of all the conversation prompts before you eat all the food or you're full, well, then your friend is gonna notice, hey, I see why you're here, so I'm going home. So you have to look down to your food so it doesn't burn. You have to look up to your friends so you can answer correctly to their prompts, and you have to keep the conversation going as you eat. That's pretty much it.
It's such a silly game. Like, to me, it's such peak itch. Like, it was just. I also think I might have been a little partial to it because I love, like, I feel like I've been in this exact situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Hot pot serious business. Yeah.
I mean, peak itch is a good descriptor for sure. The problem is that the game's great, but then it asks you to play the same thing 2 more times before it says, like, yeah, cool, you're done now. With
Yeah.
basically
It
no
didn't
changes.
change at all. I mean, the color of the background changed. But like the clothes of the friend that across the table from you didn't change, and they even joke about it. It's like, how hard would it have been to just palette swap the
The
clothes or
clothes.
something, you know? But the difficulty didn't seem to increase at all. It was just kind of different. There's some different flavor text. And that was about it.
Oh yeah,
No
that's
pun intended.
That's literally all there. Should have been pun intended. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean that's there's really not a lot to this game. Like, it's not. It's like also kind of anyway. It's an interactive.
It's fine TM in many, many ways. Like, it's inoffensive and there is something interesting to it. There's just not a lot to it.
Yeah.
No. And once you've kind of figure it out, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of figured out my quote unquote strat pretty quickly, which was just like fill up the bowl as fast as you can, just click, 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 click. And there was no penalty to overfilling the pot, like it just stopped you from putting anything else in. And there was no penalty to just clicking like mad until something was done. Because it was like this binary state of it's either cooked or not, and when it's cooked, you can get it out and eat it. So spamming clicking was a viable strategy.
Oh yeah.
So if they had tweaked that a little bit and made it some penalty, like the other person gets upset if you pull the food out before it's ready or something, or if you try to jam the pot too full, then it would have been a little bit more challenging, I think, and perhaps a bit more fun. But maybe that wasn't the intent. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other trick they missed, I think, was just in the way that the text is organized. So the idea is that you're supposed to read the bit of text that has the story, so that you can click the appropriate response when it comes up. That text is all in one box, which, by the way, because this game, for me at least, wouldn't full screen, if you click off, it pauses and you can just read that text at your own leisure.
Oh, really?
So,
find that out.
I mean,
I didn't do
number
that.
one.
Yeah.
But number two, I think it would have been much more interesting if that flavor text, rather than being one big chunk of the pertinent information, framed by like a broad opener and then a so anyway, like after it, while it's waiting to queue up you to respond. I think if they'd split that down so you could miss portions of the conversation and have to try and piece it together from the bits that you did catch, I think that would have made it more interesting.
Didn't they do that?
Yeah.
I thought there was a couple that they did do that with. At least I found there's a
No.
few. No,
It seemed to me that
you only had to catch one bit. There was only one little bit of text you had to catch that was relevant to your answer, and there was always one answer
filler.
that was.
Yeah,
the other bits are just kind of whatever.
Yeah, they're
The
just
other
the
thing
filler
is
bits,
that
right?
I noticed that you could select the top of the pot without missing the conversation.
Yeah.
So
There was
that
a
was
little
a quick
sweet
trick
spot of
to-
where to look that could kind of bridge the gap. Yeah. We're a bunch of gamers.
I never got my
in this
food
game.
burned, and I was listening
It's
to the
right.
conversation. So
Yeah, I did the same thing. I realized pretty quickly on that I could like just do half and half, and then I like didn't have any issues at all. It's just like,
I love that
okay.
we've all in various ways just broken this game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dev's over there crying. It was just about having a nice hot pot, you know.
Well, that's what I
Kind
mean.
of
I,
min-max this hot pot game.
that's the thing. I think it really was like, I can't remember if this was a game jam game or not, but I think it was literally just like, oh, this is just gonna be a fun little thing about hot pot, you know. And so, but I mean, to be fair, it's a game, so like once you put it out, you know, these are things that you consider when you're playing. And whatever, it was free, so I'm not complaining that hard.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of things being broken, I feel like my brain is broken trying to vocalize the title of this next game.
Nice
Oh, yeah.
segue. Oh yeah.
It's like a box with a line vertically through the middle. There's probably a term for what this is.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
some kind
know
of
it.
Unicode character or some kind of thing. It's not alphanumeric, so you'll have to just look. You'll have to look and see what we're talking about. But yeah, two rectangles arranged next to each other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
two
boxing
rectangles is the
auto.
best thing I can come up with for this.
It was really good though.
Cool little
This-
platformer. Yeah.
Yeah, among my favorites of the Itchmas. Nice and tight. Lots of little ideas to tweak it through. So the whole concept is that you have a vertical line, and this is why they've picked this symbol for the game: a vertical line through the game space, and at any time you can pause the action, move that line either side, and that will affect what blocks are visible, and at one point towards the end of the game, gravity. And the puzzles are designed around you needing to sort of precision platform and also manipulate this aspect of the game space. The controls were a bit floaty. There were a couple of times where I had to sort of double take things that it felt like that wasn't me. That was just my character being on ice skates a little bit. Not in a way it detracted from the experience. The levels are all tiny anyway, so you, even if you fall right back to the beginning sort of thing, you've not got far to go. Yeah, it did what it set out to do. Visuals are all good and clean. Never felt particularly stuck. Always felt like it was the right balance of working out how to do what I could see the game was asking me to do. Yeah, what did you guys think about this one?
Really didn't like this
Yeah,
game.
dug it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
you
gonna
say
be the
your piece. I'll
sourpuss.
say my contrasting one.
Yeah, so okay. Fundamentally, I think what you've said, Rick, is like, yeah, I think like I don't really disagree with much of that. It's just that
But you are going to tear it to pieces, yeah.
well, no, I think the concept of this game is fundamentally unfun for me. And when it comes to
Ouch.
platformers, because so okay, let's think about this for a second. So the enjoyment for me personally with platformers, and I know we can argue like puzzle platformer essentially within this, but most of the enjoyment is like the making of those of the platforming, right? The jumping around, the getting to where you need to go, and like the puzzling aspect is like figuring out how you're gonna get there. The thing that I really, really, really didn't like about this is the fact that your character is not precise at all. And so you're doing a puzzle platformer where you're meant to pause and then be able to precisely, after you unpause, move your character onto something that you need to. My character would fly past. Like it was really hard to tell, like, okay, where's the soft, like how much do I need to press? Because you've stopped the character in motion. And so the question becomes, now, is my character still, the input that I hit when I jumped, is my character going to, when I unpause this, immediately launch out, or are they just going to drop? And I think they just dropped. I can't remember exactly from the area, or if they continued their arc a moment. Either way,
You generally have some momentum.
you have a bit, yeah. And then so you have to hold
Yeah, they
again.
do
So
have
I'm
some
wondering how much
momentum.
do I hold or not? I really didn't like it. I found it to be incredibly imprecise. I found it to be just kind of ultimately boring in the end, because I was like, all right, all of the puzzles are move this little thingy back and forth, make some precise jumps. Ultimately, there's not a lot more to it, right? It's move the thing, make a precise jump. But oh, by the way, you know that thing you do in platformers where you jump and you get into the flow of jumping around? How about we pause you every couple seconds? I really, really, really don't vibe with that. Now listen, I can see how someone can vibe with this, because that might really click with you. It's just personally, I like fucking hated it. I was like, no, and I noped out after about like, I probably got more than halfway through, and I was just like, this is not fun. This is like a chore. This turned platforming into a chore, and I'm not a fan. Anyway, that's my hot take on it, but I get why you guys enjoyed it, because I could see how it could connect with someone.
And the irony is, you probably stopped right before the most interesting part of the game, which is the last 4 puzzles, where
That's bullshit.
the gravity
though.
moves with that line.
Oh no, I got to the gravity changing stuff.
Oh, in which case
you were
you
like
quit right
90%
before the end.
there.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I was like, I'm done. It's not a long game. You know what I mean? Like, it's not very long. So in the interest of Itchmas, I just tried to stick with it. But yeah, not a fan. Not a fan.
See, for me, I agree with you that the platforming was a bit imprecise, and sometimes you could kind of be on the edge of a platform and start to slip, or it just didn't feel super tight. But the whole concept of manipulating yourself around the line, and when I say the line, I mean the dividing line that basically changes the state of the game space on each side. Like, to me, that just felt so cool, because most of the time you have to stay close to the line, and while you manipulate the line, you're basically suspended in air. Time kind of freezes while you manipulate the line. So it just feels kind of powerful to be able to, without thinking too hard about it, when you get into the flow, you jump, you move the line across, you're on the other side now, then you land and jump again and move it back over, and you just kind of start to see, I don't know, it's just kind of starts to make sense, and it feels good once you master that concept, which for me took a few levels. Like, I was super stumped at first until I realized how you could kind of all put the pieces together. So yeah, I don't know. It was we had the same, we observed the same things, but just reacted to them differently, which is interesting. It's cool.
Yeah, it's one of those games that I think is honestly like fairly polarizing, because like you said, I think it's a strong concept, and I just think when you have such a strong concept, there's just a really good chance of it not sitting right with some people. You know what I mean? And I was one of those people.
In my case,
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
like it, but not to the point that maybe Rick and June liked it, because I also was kind of like bothered by how slippery my character feet were, like, and there were like a couple of puzzles where I had to try like endlessly try time and time again, because I just couldn't figure out like where did the momentum of my character took me next. So one thing that I was kind of reminded of what lies in the multiverse, in the sense of you have 2 scenarios and you have to pretty much remember like where you have to land. But in the case of what lies in the multiverse, the thing that made more fun in my eyes was the not pausing.
Exactly.
And it's
the
a different
instantaneousness,
approach, right?
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't work on a dividing line, because you've got to place the line somewhere.
And I think that's my
Yeah, the
point,
thing
is
with
that I don't think
the
the dividing
dividing
line is
line-
interesting.
But I think
It
it
is in-
scratches the same itch. That's the thing. Like, I definitely felt like there were some peak platforming moments in Multiverse, and there are some other platformers that take a similar concept. And I felt that same rush when you stick the landing and you've moved the things around, and it all feels right as you go through. It sounds like it never felt right for you, and I get that. The momentum, like, I think we've all recognized that the controls could have been tighter, but yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is that when I was trying to platform, I either accidentally pressed the bar, the space bar, trying to jump or something, or like having to pause, move the line, and pause, move the character, kind of like make my brain go turn into a pile of mash at some points.
Yeah, this game short circuits your brain for sure.
Yeah.
Almost would, you know what? But then again, I don't know. Could this work in a larger format? I don't know if it could. But part of me was like, it might even benefit from like a game that was just a bit bigger with more testing in it, and like ramping you up to the more complexity, because you could probably get pretty complex with this.
Yeah, or even wrap some story or something around it, like give it some structure, give it a little bit of time to breathe, because it's just like puzzle after puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, which is, I mean, it's fine. And I was just checking their page. This was a game jam game made in 72 hours. So
Yeah,
you
that's
got
what I
to
thought.
respect the polish for the short dev time, of course.
Oh, for sure.
But like, yeah, you think about something like Celeste that has some brutal platforming sequences, but also breaks up and has some nice story and has pacing. This, due to the small scale, doesn't really have any pacing except for the difficulty of the levels. So yeah, I think it really could work as a bigger concept.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely in the context of the time they had, it succeeds. I didn't realize it was that quick a turnaround for it.
Yeah, really fast.
nice. Well, why don't we continue on with a game that I really liked? We become what we behold.
I didn't play this one only because we already played it, or I already played it when we did the Extravaganza earlier last year.
You did, yeah.
I did. There's another one that's coming up later that was exactly the same, but this remains among my favourites of the one in this year's Itchmas lineup. I think this is a phenomenal game.
Yes.
I think the commentary is really biting and really cutting and really relevant. I love the way that the game tells its story. I like that it is really concise and precise with the way that it does that. The game just really, really worked for me on every level. And it's laugh out loud funny at the same time as having a real message to get across.
Yeah, and
It is, yeah. It's got definitely some goofiness. Like the art style reminds me of like stick figure games from the early Flash days of the
Bit
internet.
Cyanide and Happy,
you know?
if it was black and white.
Yeah, it's like Cyanide and Happiness.
Yeah.
Art's also like there was a game I used to love called Madness Interactive. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It was a Flash game, but it definitely has some of that quirky, super simple silliness about it. But then again, the biting message, which is about just kind of the sensationalization. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
news.
Sensationalism, maybe, but we know what you mean. I'm not sure which one's the right one, but yeah.
Yeah, that concept of just about how news gets manipulated into showing us, extreme things, violent things, stuff that sells ad time and that makes people tune in, which leads to more behaviors of those kind of things and how it can reach some crazy extreme. So yeah, it was biting. It made me feel dirty, because it was so true, and it's not a very pleasant truth. I didn't enjoy it, let's say, spending the time with it because of that, but I still respect it for doing what it set out to do very well.
I
Yeah.
have to say that I played this game last year, and it has still the same problem for some reason. That when I installed the game and played it, the text was just gibberish. So I didn't get like any of the of whatever the screen news said, or like any of the humor that you guys are talking about. So for me, you're talking about a completely different game. Another thing is I think I soft locked myself out of the game somehow, because I spent like, I'm gonna say 10 minutes and the screen just didn't, nothing new seemed to happen. And I do remember that last time I played the game, there was something happening like after the last event that happened in this time around. And that event never came to pass. So I tried to play it again because I wanted like to see if I could like play it as intended, but I couldn't even play it as last year, so that was kind of sad.
It's really
Is
weird.
it a download one? I thought it was an online one. I don't know. Again, it's a while since I've played this one.
It's either or. You could do browser or you can download.
Yeah, I downloaded it and it was fine, but weird. That sucks.
That's annoying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I
That's the
really
itch experience. Some are super polished and bug free, and others are not.
yeah. Yeah, that is itch in a nutshell. I mean, I just thought it was really fun. Like it's just such a it's fairly silly, like, to be honest. Like as biting as it is, I think in this day and age it's maybe not quite as biting as it maybe could have been. Like you're kind of like, yeah. At least that's how I felt a little bit, but I still really liked it. And I thought the like kind of like the commentary as you're going along, I'm like, that doesn't sound like, I almost wish that there was more of a like emphasis on like you're like running a news thing or something, just to like, because anyway, it was great. It's fun. It's a fun game to just pop in for like, what was it, like 20 minutes or so. It's really not, yeah, maybe less.
Yeah, sure, not even.
Yeah, so like I do highly recommend people check it out because it's just maybe just play the browser then, because if Paula, like you mentioned, if there's issues with the download, maybe just try playing it online.
I tried and I couldn't. Like for some reason,
Bro, your
my
computer's fucked.
desktop PC, yeah, my desktop PC doesn't want to play the HIO games on browser, but it is just this one. The other ones that I played on browser, like the CR Richards ones, play just fine.
This sounds like a
Go figure.
mystery that I have no answer to.
My
Pro-
computer
Probably is
just
it-
doesn't want me to play the game. That's the thing.
But if it
universe.
works on your system, I think we're pretty unanimous that you should check it out.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
A funny recommend. If it works for you, play it.
Yeah, basically.
Nice. Well, why don't we let's keep swimming along here to a game that actually. So you guys played the last one a year ago, and I played this one a year ago. This is the year after. So we're talking about this. Damn, that was a segue. We're talking about this game the year after I played it.
And the year after Itchmas, technically.
Exactly. So this is a little Game Boy game that I think is really lovely. It's essentially like, well, okay. If you're listening to this, we're in spoiler town here because this is what Itchmas. This is what this is all about, right? Have you not played it?
I have to know it a
Oh
bit.
God, you guys!
They-
Yeah, you guys gotta play the damn games before.
This is the first of 3 games I haven't played on this list. All 3 of them for the exact same reason. I told you guys all this before we got on the recording. I have a flash cart on my Game Boy Advance that plays Game Boy games. I thought, that'd be a much better way to play them. Put them on the flash cart, never touched them. And here we are.
Shame.
But I am committed. I will get round
Game's
to
fault,
playing
though.
them.
That's on you, my friend.
It's
Yeah.
on me. It is on me, and it will be on a regular episode in the future when I do get round to them. But
Well,
for today's conversation, I unfortunately can't.
close your ears
same.
for a second because I'm going to talk about why I like this game.
Yeah, give me a novel. I'm
Okay.
good to go.
All right, yeah. So essentially, you're playing as Death, as far as I remember, and you're kind of going through this like, it's more of like it's like a Game Boy walking sim kind of, and yeah, I just really, really, really loved it. I thought the concept and the conceit was really nice. It's like actually fairly like deep and meaningful story to it. So yeah. Anyway,
Ooh.
I'm gonna tell them to put their headphones back on now. I don't know. What did you think, dude?
I actually didn't play it. It's one of the few that I didn't play either because I had technical issues. So I was trying to play it at night on my gaming laptop, and the game would just kind of hang on the loading, like very initial loading screen. I tried downloading, I tried playing browser, I tried something else too, and just couldn't get it to run. And then it did run on my desktop PC the next day, but I was just doing other stuff, and I just never got back around to it. So, but hearing you say, so I heard the spoiler that you. I'm not going to say the spoiler again, but I heard it, and that's very interesting because I like games that use that as a central theme. So I may have to revisit it based on that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I might have forgotten, but I know it's something along those lines. Like it's definitely no, I'm remembering it right. That is what happens. Yeah, it's super.
I trust you.
Yeah, I have to because I'm like, oh, it was a year ago, I guess. But I don't know. I think it's really nice. It's so if you don't like Game Boy games, this is one of those games where I don't think it matters because it's really not leaning into the fact that it's a Game Boy game so much. It's just kind of using the aesthetic of the Game Boy to do what I would consider to be a fairly modern genre. And I think that's what gives it a lot of strength. Because look, Game Boy games for me, I am down. You know, like I know a lot of people who don't like them. You know, the I don't know, the ancient controls, the lack of quality features can really bug a lot of people, and I think very reasonably so. I I definitely don't begrudge anyone for not enjoying Game Boy games, but for me, it's just the perfect right mix of like minimalist design, and this one in particular, I think, just really hits it out of the park. I guess I'm the only
This
one.
one
who
at
can-
least is like a Game Boy Color game, so it does
Yes.
have color. That's kind of where my line gets drawn. If it's just like original Game Boy, monochrome, greenish, that's kind of my threshold. But it's because I wanted to play this. Although I did play the game in the list that was like monochrome old school Game Boy style we can talk about later. But
I have a feeling I
yeah.
might be the only one who really liked that one, but I'm prepared to be for the dislike on that one. But yeah, this one is very Game Boy Color-y, and it leans into all of that good shit. So yeah, okay. I was the only one who played it, so let's move along to oh, can you say it, Paula? What's the next game?
The next one?
Sisão,
Sorry.
I guess.
Sisão? Yeah.
Sisão?
Sisão.
Sisão?
I
Okay.
liked
I
like
think it
this
is
one a
Sisão.
lot.
Me too.
Did you guys play the 7-level version on itch, or did you go to the guy's website and play the 10-level version?
I went to the guy's website.
Cool.
I just did the itch version.
So there's a link on the itch page. He's like, oh, come to my website. I've got 3 more levels on there. And I actually think the last couple of levels were probably the best couple of levels. But I mean, even the 7 that they are, I honestly thought this was going to be a fair bit longer. When I played it, I was like, oh, each, one of the 10 worlds has got like sub-levels. But no, it's just 10 levels. But it is a nice short little, it's like a really trimmed down version of, it was a game on DS called Chronos Twin.
That's
I tried it briefly. It is a deep cut, but you know the one I mean, right? Where it's the blue guys and each screen is one of the characters. I'm pretty sure they remade a version of it for like more modern platforms. Not PS5, obviously, but like in between then and now. But it's that kind of concept. You've got one character and their reflection, and they're playing above and below the water, and they've got to both be standing on the flag at the end. It's a nice little puzzle platform. I think if it was longer, I'm not sure I would have stuck with it, to be fair. Not necessarily that it was bad, just not always my vibe, but it was good. Nothing too complicated. Controls were probably a lot smoother than some of the other games on the list. It felt very responsive. Nice sort of tropical visuals, which again, jumped out versus a lot of the other stuff that we were playing on this year's Itchmas. Yeah, fun game overall, I think.
It felt very distinct. Like, I think that was the thing I liked about it. And I would say I bought this concept a little bit more than 2 rectangles. Because really, they're the 2 big platformers this year, I think. Yeah, I don't think there's any other platformers, is there? No, okay. So there's technically one more.
You got Black Castle and yeah.
Well, anyway, it's the one that I think, like, in terms of the platformers, is probably the one that I think would maybe have the widest appeal. Because, again, I just thought that the concept was very clever. And it did take me, like, there was a few levels where I was like, oh, shit, wait, what do I have to do here? But not in, like, a frustrating way, just in, like, oh, that's an interesting twist that I really liked. Like, that, to me, was just really fun to be, like, having to sit there and just really think deeply about, like, how do I make these moves work? So yeah, I really, really dug this one. I thought it was really cool.
I'll kind of counter a little bit, and I mean, I didn't dislike it, but I thought it was kind of average. My complaints with it were the assets, the actual character sprite. It wasn't pixel art style. It was clean vector style, and all the assets for background and stuff. It just looked a little bit like it came from an asset store and wasn't.
That's fair.
Wasn't homemade, and I much prefer the very dark gem tone pixel art aesthetic of 2 rectangles compared to this tropical vector art, almost flash game looking visuals of Sisão. But I did think the gameplay was nice. I agree with both of you that it didn't outstay its welcome and had some good challenge. There was definitely some times where it took me quite a few tries to get through a level, and you could get to a fail state. I mean, you would immediately restart the level, but you could drop off the platforms, and have to retry. So there was some parts that, worked the old noodle a little bit. But I just felt like the aesthetics and the polish, I noticed some slipperiness to the platforming, especially around the edges of platforms, kind of like 2 rectangles too, turned me off a bit.
Actually, now that you mentioned that did just kind of unlock a memory in my head. Yeah, pushing the blocks off of stuff, it's like they just flew very randomly. Like, it was so hard to figure out where they were going to land. Yeah,
that's fair.
that was weird. That part was weird. Now that I think about it, I was like, yeah, that is a little weird. But yeah, I hadn't thought about the asset store thing that much. But now that you mention it, yeah, you're right. there is a fair bit of that in it too.
I mean, not everyone is an artist. If you're just a programmer and you've got a game concept, asset store is fair game for sure. And I mean, but just as a player, I much prefer the hand drawn pixel art, and that's just a preference. Totally recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Paula, I don't think you touched this one, did you?
No, I think I downloaded it, but I didn't get to play it because of time.
That's fair.
I only got to play for games on my lunch break, so
you're
I'm just
working.
here as decoration today.
Yeah. Well, let's talk Angerfoot. Dude, this game's dope. This is like a full goddamn game, and I think it's releasing this year, isn't it? I was like a full release.
Well, they're expanding it quite a bit too.
Fuck yeah!
It's a couple of guys, and you know what? I didn't realize this. This was one of my nominations. Woohoo! Or my nomination that won. But it's a lot of the same devs. I'm gonna have to look up the name unless one of you guys have it handy. But they made Genital Jousting, which is quite an interesting and cool game. And they made another game that's escaping me. I'm gonna look it up while you guys talk. But it's a couple of guys from a studio that's put out some stuff, some proper releases that are paid.
Nice.
These guys made Broforce?
Oh, they're the Broforce.
Sorry, what was that?
Is it the free lives?
It is.
Team?
Yeah, it is free lives. That's it. Yeah. So Broforce, big game. Genital Jousting, not quite as big, but still, had some impact. And Angerfoot. So they kind of have a knack for games with really unique style, whether it's like extreme pixel art, 80s, 90s action movie hero, Broforce, or Genital Jousting. The name tells you most of what you need to know there. And Angerfoot, I mean, the gameplay is like a pretty fast-paced first-person shooter where you're constantly kicking doors down, you're kicking enemies, and then you can take their guns and you can shoot too. So there's some gunplay. You can throw the guns. So it's like this constant just running, kicking, shooting, throwing. Kicking some more, kicking.
I mean, it's 3D Hotline Miami, right? Like that's like the
it pretty much is. You got to really be careful around corners because you can't take too many hits. And then I mean, you got to talk about the music because it's just this really high BPM, hardcore electronic going in the background, and it ramps up as you are fighting, and it kind of slows down if you stop fighting for a little while, and you just get in this zone where I would just be nodding my head, to the rhythm, and it just really evoked a lot of fun. It was a very fun, silly kind of game that was high intensity.
Hell yeah.
Two things have just popped in my head. First, there's a very macho through line to anger, bros, genitals.
Yeah.
There's something going on at that studio, but also that has answered the question that popped into my head when they announced that Broforce was getting another big update, which was how on earth are these guys still funding the studio? I didn't know that Angerfoot and Genital Jousting were them as well. I thought they were just the Broforce guys. So that's interesting. Completely separately to this, I liked this a lot. I have my reservations about it as a full game. So to be totally clear, like I played the Steam demo of this last Next Fest rather than the itch version, but I've played a version of it. I like it a lot. I like the concept. I like the idea of Hotline Miami in 3D space. What I think is a mild concern that there's a beautiful fluidity to Hotline Miami and its sequel, which I will go to bat for the rest of my days. It's just as good, if not better, than the original. The issue with 3D is you don't have the same foresight to make that kind of precision count. And to be fair, if memory serves, Angerfoot isn't as brutal. It's not like a one-hit kill. You have you can tank a few hits out before you'll bite the bullet.
And you've got a couple of hits you can take.
Yeah, but it still feels very cagey in a way that Hotline Miami didn't. Maybe that's, I didn't give it enough time. Maybe on the full release, it will be more accommodating for flow state game play and stringing things together in the way that Hotline Miami at its brutal best does. I am worried that it might fall a bit flat come release time. But again, it's a dev with good pedigree, and the demo was really, really good. The fundamentals are all there potentially, so it'll be an interesting one to see. I think it's this year it's due out. It can't be too far off now.
I think someone has it on Fantasy Critic League, so it's coming out this year, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely had issues. Oh, sorry, Alex. Do you mind if I do my quick little spiel? So the game, it really wants you to be aggressive and get into that flow state and just be constantly, cruising your way and kicking through the levels. But it actually de-incentivizes you to do that with some of the level design, because you'll run up into a room, kick the door down, and it's just this huge room with, 10 enemies that all just start wailing on you. So a lot of times the most tactical thing to do is just use doors as choke points, wait for the guys to come to you, and just sit there and kick them, and it's like kind of not as fun, right?
The AI was so stupid.
Well, the initial ones, like the first crocodile guys, they'll just kind of run through and try to hit you with the stick or whatever they got, and the next guys with the pistols will just kind of run until they see you. But there are some later enemies, like there's the guys with the riot shields. I think it's ducks with riot shields that are immune to kicks, and they stay put where they are, so you have to go to them. No, wait, they're immune to bullets. You have to kick them, so you have to get up in their face. The game does play with its own kind of AI limitations. And I got really frustrated towards the end of the demo and retired it, because I was like, all right, I've had my fun. I've had enough. I'm not going to force myself to try to beat it, because I was kind of getting tired of it during that session. But it definitely, I think, had some thought that had to be put into it more to take it to a next level of actually making it rewarding and fun and successful to play the way it seemed to make you want to play. You know what I mean?
I do. See, it got to me. Like, I definitely was frustrated, but it was like the kind of frustration that Ghosts and Goblins makes me feel, which is where I'm like, I'm gonna fucking beat you, game. Which I think, again, kind of like what we talked about with the two rectangles one. I do think this is a game that could be very, very, very polarizing, like you said. Like, really, unless it hits an itch for you. I can see people bouncing off it really, really quickly, because you're totally right. Like, I definitely got frustrated too near the end with some of the levels, because you had to like it's one of those games that it wants you to essentially memorize its layout, right? And like memorize how everything works, so that you come in and you get like basically a flawless run, right? Like, that's kind of what it's going for. And the thing is, I don't think it's really in the state that it's in on itch. I don't think it really earns that. Like, I did it because I knew it wasn't super, super long, and it's like, whatever. But I think if this game is to like really level up on its full release, they're going to have to do something that makes it feel more rewarding to play through, because you also have to restart from the beginning of the level every time you die, which fucking sucks sometimes, because you get pretty goddamn far in and you're like, oh, are you for real? Like, actually, this is an issue I'm having with the game I'm playing right now. Nobody Saves the World, which it does a similar thing in its dungeons. And dude, there's nothing more demoralizing than like losing just all this progress in something and being like, oh great, now I just have to go through all that again. So yeah.
Oh, you're giving me Wargroove flashbacks. We're losing like a 2-hour long slow-paced tactical battle. But yeah, I mean, here the levels are like, I mean, the minimum times are in the sub-minute range, because you get some in-game achievements for doing that enough. But like, you can reasonably beat most in a handful of minutes. So it's not like as crushing as, you've lost an hour of progress or something, but it definitely still hurts. And then all the freaking enemies are like taunting you and dancing over you, like basically teabagging you as you're dead.
Yeah, so they fucking, oh god, they go at you, man. They make you feel like shit.
It's funny the first couple times, but not as much later.
Then you're like, I swear to God, I will bury you and your family. You're like, I will win. Which maybe that's what they want you to feel as you play the game. I will kill you all. All right. Well, speaking of that anger
part of that, right?
Yeah, there you go. There it is.
Their names are spot on. I mean, you are angry and you are doing a lot with your foot.
Yeah.
Your foot is angry. And that kick is pretty satisfying.
It is very satisfying.
They nailed the whole kick thing.
Well, going from anger to depression, let's talk about Mary's Room.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
subway?
it's one of those. It's Dear Esther. It's fucking
It's a feel bad
Gone
game.
Home. It's a feel bad game. Yeah, it's a find out why you're a piece of shit game. That's what it is basically. You're totally muted, Rick.
I was saying it's a convoluted feel bad game.
Yeah, it's
like
hard to
there are a
understand
lot
what's
of
going on.
jumps in that story.
With that seemed like a weak link to me too.
If we're being generous, probably one of the most polished games of the collection. Like
Yeah, I
it
would say
was
so.
nicely put together. It just falls apart on the story. The story's not very good.
Story is borderline incomprehensible. I
no,
barely
it's
understood.
comprehensible.
Especially you're piecing it together from bits and pieces, and you're not. I mean, it's an explore the room game, right?
Yeah.
Like the games you were listing at the beginning. And Rick, you're right. It's very pretty. It's full 3D. It's got some nice post processing effects. It looks, very polished. But you have to progress by clicking on a bunch of different items in this girl's room, which then unlock entries in a journal. And then you got to find some clues in the journal, and then that lets you get to the end state of the game. But by that nature, and there's no guidance as to go around the room in this direction or go around the room in the other direction, and then you've missed something that you can click on, and then that opens something up in the journal at a whole different time. So it's just super scattered, and then really 90% of the important part of the story comes in a big info dump at the end. So the satisfying stuff isn't really during your actual gameplay, which made it kind of a tough sell.
And I have to say, I actually don't mind. Like, obviously, you've said you would have preferred some guidance potentially as to going around the room and exploring stuff and putting it into the journal. I actually think, from a gameplay perspective, and this is a side I don't particularly fall on. Normally, I find this kind of game quite rote and basic. I actually liked the concept that, mild spoiler, you're this character sort of coming back to a situation, however many years after the fact, and reminiscing, and through that reminiscence, that's putting the journal together. I liked that a lot. The problem is that is asking you to poke and prod at a story that cannot stand up to the slightest poking or prodding, because there are so many contrivances, so many gaps, so many conveniences. It just doesn't work. I think that story you might kind of get away with it if it was a linear,
and there's the issue, right?
composed, directed experience. But if you want to set up that kind of self-led narrative, which again, I like the system, I like the setup, you've got to have a story that can match it, and this game just doesn't.
And you need to have a story that benefits from the nonlinear approach, right? This is a story that, because they cannot control how you receive the information, ends up being kind of confusing until you get, and that's why I think they need the info dump at the end, right? Because they're like,
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, they're like, well, no one's gonna really know what's going on. Like, I mean, you kind of do. You're like, okay, I got a slight understanding, but I still don't know who I am. And then once I think I just tuned out. I kind of forgot who I was at the end, but I was like, okay, whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad game per se. I just think it's a misguided game. Like you said, had the narrative been a bit different, and also like the journal doesn't really make that much sense. So you find memories and magic things appear. That's fine. But like, what are you going for in this game, right? Like, are you going for, like, for instance, in a game like Gone Home, part of the strength to it is that it's an internally consistent game. And what you're finding isn't necessarily unlocking magical pages. It's just like, oh, you're learning more about the mystery as you go along. So like, I think that was part of it that I'm like a little unsure of. Like, it's a tough premise from the get-go, right? So I don't know. I bounced off a little bit, but again, this isn't a bad game per se. It's just a game that I feel like its flaws are very evident,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's nicely done and well polished in a lot of ways. But yeah, if you look too closely behind the curtain, it'll start to unravel a bit.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to it probably being the most technologically sound of the games to play, probably, though. Like, I never had any issues with it at all. It seemed like it was well made at the very least, which is not a small feat. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not.
Any other thoughts? Did you play this one, Paula? No? This is one of the ones.
No, I didn't. I didn't play the next one, but I do have something to say about it based on the stupidly long title.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's get to the next one here. Paula, why don't you read that title for us then?
Yeah, take us on in.
So the name of the game is I accidentally insulted a witch, and now all my clothes are sentient and they hate me. And do not tell me that isn't the title of a Japanese light novel, because in Japan they do have light novels and their names are all stupidly long. Okay, not all of them, but for example, we have Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, and then we have Ascendance of a Bookworm, I'll Stop at Nothing to Become a Librarian. And then we have the biggest offender of them all. I reincarnated into an Otome game as a villainess with only destruction flags. Don't tell me I accidentally insulted a witch and now all my clothes are sentient and they hate me. Isn't a Japanese line.
No. It is. You're totally right. And I've got two more to throw into the ring. The first one is, and I only know this exists because there's a game coming out for it at some point. Is it wrong to try and pick up girls in a dungeon?
Yeah, I know
I
that
knew
one.
it was going to be a vaguely sexual game when he said, I only
Yeah,
know
and
about
then-
this because... No
What's the-
shame. It's all good.
I'm just asking.
I just thought that was funny, yeah. The classic lead-in. I only know about this, guys, because I was doing research on this.
A friend told me about
Yeah,
it.
I would never play it. No, it's fine.
And what was the other one?
It's kind of fun though.
I reincarnated
one that's
into
like-
a slime or something. Like there's
That was the one.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
I think I've read one of those mangas. I think there was like a big manga dump a long time ago on Humble, and I think I got that one. It seemed funny, but it might have been too Japanese for me. It's like I don't really understand all this very well.
There's definitely a threshold.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this game I retired like almost immediately. It was very fast. I just didn't.
Ironically, because it was so slow in my case, I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah,
But like,
I was doing my
I feel
first little battle against my first item of clothing, and it was just like, okay, I'm just mashing spacebar, mashing something, and it's just this
Mhm.
painfully slow text of this conversation, and it lost me pretty fast.
oh yeah.
and the shame is the writing is really, really good. Or at least what I saw of the writing was really, really good. Like the intro.
I was gonna
is
say
like,
maybe.
the intro is the titular witch, and she's like, "Oh, what's your name?" Just kidding, I don't care. And there's a few more lines like that as you go through that are really, really witty and well done and engaging. But it's a stylistic choice, I think, because it's trying to ape the feel of like the original Game Boy Pokemon games
Yeah.
and similar handheld RPGs from that era. But it's just so damn laborious to actually try and pick through. And it is a little bit reassuring, I have to say, to hear that both of you noped out for a very similar reason in a very similarly short amount of time. At least it's not just me.
Well, it's also like when you start it up, it wears its conceit on its face, right? Like the title tells you exactly what you're going to get. So when you start and you're like, this isn't much fun, it's not going to get better. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like, oh, maybe it's going to change. I'm like, no, this is the fucking game. The title says what the game is. This is what the game is. So
That's a back of the box quote if ever I've heard one. This isn't much fun. It's not going to get better.
yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, and I mean, for me, I just really was feeling more like gameplay heavy games, and that's just kind of been my preference lately in general. So the idea of just mashing space and watching text, and it just wasn't what I was in the mood for anyway.
And
Same.
that probably leads us perfectly into the next game on the list, which I'm certain is the one that you were alluding to earlier, Dune. Am I right in guessing that?
Oh, fuck this fucking game.
You are very right.
Do you want to know my
I mean,
biggest?
Go on.
My biggest motherfucking pet peeve in any game.
And
that
this
I
game
will
is
play.
Null, by the way.
Yeah,
for the people who
Null
are listening, so I don't think about that.
2022, because I guess there's more fucking games called Null. But anyway, I don't know. That's the least offensive thing of it. Yeah. Any fucking game that starts with like a character breaking the fourth wall so intensely and pretending like they know that I fucking hate that shit so much, dude. Because I'm like, because you know what betrays
The
to
writer
me?
is full of themselves.
But it's not even that. Like the writer maybe is full of themselves, maybe not. They might have people who really enjoy the games. That's fine. But what it betrays to me is a complete lack of faith in your story. because what you're doing is like it's hiding sincerity behind false irony in a way, right? It's like, oh, I'm like, because you want to tell a sincere story, but you end up doing this thing where it's like, look at these characters, it's a story, guys. It doesn't really matter. And I fucking hate that shit so much. I'm like, be sincere in your art. Like, if you want to make something, even if it's not that great, like, just be sincere with it. That's all I'm asking, you know? Like, none of this, God, I hated it. Also, I'm sorry, but look, I'm not a person to harp on spelling that much. I teach English. I get it. It's tough, you know? It can be tough. But for the love of fucking God, dude, if you're going to make a visual novel, you gotta, like, I don't know, man. Like, it's kind of important in these, you know what I mean? Like, I can ignore spelling mistakes and shit. That's fine, whatever. But like when the grammar gets really fucked, that's when you're starting to be like, but I gotta read this a lot. And the issue is that it stops your reading, right? Like, and again, that's why it bothers me. Like typos, you can skim through a typo, right? And it's like, whatever, man, it happens. Shit happens. People make typos. But grammar will like literally stop your reading because as you're going, it trips you up. And so then you can't go through it. And like the benefit of visual novels is the fluidity of reading it, right? The getting into this flow of reading what's going on, not this like, anyway, this game, man, no good. No bueno.
And I don't know how far you got in, but I mean,
Not
the
far.
bit that I know. So that I tried to persevere. Where I noped out is obviously it's like it's a killing game with an amnesiac protagonist and like a Monokuma stand-in, because everyone stole the idea from. Well, no, that's not fair. But Danganronpa popularized the idea, and then everyone just tried to do their own version. It also then becomes a time travel plot. And at the point that it's like, oh, we reset the loop every time we die, I was just like, too much, like, too many things.
Can I slam into this one game?
Yeah.
I have all the ideas. I'm going to use every single one right now. It's like, oh God. There's a reason these are used individually at max 2 at a time.
It was like, can I time travel back to before I installed this game?
Yeah.
Ooh, nice.
Salty, but I like it.
What about you, Gene? What did you think about this one?
So I swerved it because whatever I was doing that day, I didn't get to the itch stuff until later, and which for me, like they would normally be revealed around 5 p.m. my time. That's 1700 for you Europeans, and if I did the math right,
Smart.
and yeah, and so I had the whole evening the day before to play. But for whatever reason, I was busy, maybe doing something with the baby or maybe working on something else. And so I had time to see a bunch of other people's feedback about the sloppy writing, the typos, the fact that it took almost a couple hours to get through, that the story itself was not that great. And I was just like, you know what? I think I'm going to do something else. So I did.
You're going to be nice to yourself and just nope out of this. Paula, you played this, didn't you? Visual novel.
I didn't.
Oh, I thought you said you did play this one. Never mind. Okay. I thought you said you played the one after. Well,
I
good for
didn't,
you.
and I think I'm grateful I did not even touch this one.
Yeah.
Bullet well and truly dodged for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes, man, I didn't even vote for this one because I saw it and I went, nah, bro. HIO visual novels? I think not. I'm like, they're hard to be good in the first. Like, it's a difficult goddamn genre. Like, because you're writing a fucking novel.
Good ones that are in HIO. You just have to dig through all the shit to find them.
Yeah, and I had a feeling we hadn't dug deep enough. So we were still in the shit a little bit. Maybe we were getting close, but not close enough. Anyway, sorry. Enough to... they made a game, so that's good for them. Let's keep going now. I don't know why I'm feeling really salty right now. Let's see here. Let's go to a game. I thought this game was kind of cool. Kuro 2022 as well, because that just means black in Japanese, I think. Yeah, okay. Some are gonna dig it.
It does.
Yeah, Kuro. Yeah, there. My Japanese is coming in handy for once. And will never again. So it's like a PS1 style graphics, horror light, I would say. It's not that scary game.
Yeah, it's creepy-ish.
Yeah, it's more like creepypasta inspired, you know. And it's just kind of like you did, and you're a little ghosty, and you're coming through this house to figure out what happened to something. And it's just kind of aesthetic, and the story is kind of silly, but I thought it was fun and it looked nice and it was very short, and that made me go, not bad. Also, I played this after Null, so might have been a little, but
Good act to follow.
yeah, right.
Easy act to follow.
I was like, oh shit, this is pretty good. Which that could have influenced my higher view of this one, but I don't know, Rick. You gave it kind of a meh.
I bounced off this one almost immediately. Like it's not necessarily my vibe at the best of times, but I realized it was tank controls. I was like, I don't want to do this right now, and then never came back to it.
Oh,
and that's no comment on the game. That's just it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily cater to my tastes.
Just as an FYI, the tank controls don't really matter. Like you're never gonna have to be like outrunning something or like dexterously moving around. I think that was just an aesthetic choice because this is very much a walking sim. Like you're just going through and finding stuff.
Yeah,
that's
it's kind
fair.
of like Resident Evil 1 without any zombies or enemies. It's just a matter of finding the right next item and going to the right place and interacting with that item to trigger the next bit of progress. And it did have some cool aesthetics. I mean, it uses like this PSX render pipeline thing that will turn whatever polygons you send it into the kind of grainy, wiggly textures that PlayStation was known for. And it's a very, very low poly, blocky style on purpose. So it looks pretty legit for the vision is trying to do. But it is slow. I mean, your character, this little blocky person, just moves very slow, and they turn with tank style, and it's fixed camera angle. So, gameplay wise, it's not thrilling. It's more,
No.
do you resonate with the aesthetic and with the vibe? And I thought it was decent. It was competently put together and didn't have any bugs I could find. But it didn't wow me either. I was kind of middle of the road on it.
I think that's a pretty fair take on it. Again, it's like your mileage will vary on this one. If you're into these sort of PlayStation-y type games, then you go to. It's like, remember that one last year that we played, the Black Crisis, or what was that fucking one we played? Do you remember? God damn it, deleted.
Yeah,
it.
Black Crisis.
Black. Was it Black Iris? The Black Iris, was that it?
Black Iris.
Yeah, the Black
Was that
Iris.
the sciencey one where you had to
Yeah.
take the? Yes, I do know what you're talking about. Actually, I do.
That's a much better version of this kind of game, but it's the same sort of vibes. And it reminded me of that game a lot. Anyway, yeah, that's Kuro.
Okay.
It's fun. Oh, let's go to the one I suggested, which I think a lot of people probably didn't like, but I had a fucking blast with, and that's Black Castle. So I'm gonna get my couple cents out of this one first. I fucking loved this game. This game was dope. And you know why? Okay.
I would love this game.
Yes, I would. And do you know why though? It's Ghosts and Goblins, the roguelike. And that's why I saw a lot of people disliking it. And I'm gonna sound so pretentious here. I think a lot of people fundamentally didn't understand how this game works. And that's not their fault, because nothing really explains how it's meant to function, unless you have actually played the games that it's based on. A lot of that is like the pickups and stuff. Like people were really confused about like, why are these like things here? Like, oh, some of these aren't as useful. And I'm like, yeah, this is not great game design necessarily. But because, for instance, they have like the fireballs, they have like the daggers, they have like all these items that you'll pick up and go and use. And you do want to use save states for this, I would recommend in this day and age. Which also, like, that's like Ghosts and Goblins. It's Ghosts and Goblins. This is what it is. It's Ghosts and Goblins, the roguelike. You even look like King Arthur a bit. And that's why I fucking loved it. I thought the bosses were fun. I thought the controls were actually quite tight. I played it on a Game Boy, by the way. So it was awesome on the Game Boy. And I might go play it again, actually. I had a really good time with it. If you found it kind of baffling why some choices were made in this, I would, because I remember reading someone talking about this, and I was like, all your points are totally valid. I just think that you should maybe try to play Ghost Goblins. But again, this is such a niche game. It's so niche. It is literally meant for a very small portion of people to enjoy. And I just happen to be one of those. So if you didn't like this game, I totally get it. Which, Dune, I'm assuming, what did you think?
I liked it. I mean, like I said, I'm feeling more like gameplay games right now, and this is pretty much straight action platformer left to right. I'm curious what you meant when you say roguelite, though. I mean, yeah, there's no continues or anything. Is that what you mean? You die, you go back to the start.
Yeah, more like that. Like maybe not even roguelite. It's more arcade. That's a better word for it. It's an arcade.
Yeah, just kind of
game.
Arcade retro style platform design.
Exactly.
I thought it was fun. I abused the hell out of save states, so I downloaded the ROM and played it in RetroArch with some of my usual 2D filters and shaders to make it look a little bit more old school. But when I say I abused save states, I mean I abused save states. I tied save states up in my basement. Basically, any move, like any jump. Oh, successful jump! I didn't take damage. Quick F4, F4 and F5 were my little buttons, and it, like literally, I played it almost in stop motion, just
that's
because that's efficient. Yeah, I mean, but I enjoyed it enough. It was visually very samey. I mean, the name of the game is Black Castle, so you're literally in this simple Castlevania-esque type environment the whole time. I would have liked an attempt at a little bit more diversity to the visuals, because there was, a handful of enemy types, 4 or 5 maybe. There was, I think, 4 bosses, and you pretty much going left to right with really almost no verticality to the levels, except for you could do some Super Mario Brothers 1 style jumping up onto hidden platforms and run up on the top edge of the world, which was cool, like above the actual rendering of the screen.
I like that.
Which was a nice nod, yeah. But I thought it was decent. I found one particular ranged weapon, or you only had one weapon. I found one particular weapon that I thought worked well, because I think it had a little bit of an arc to the projectile, but it bounced. So I was like, ooh, this is the shit. I'm going to use this little bouncy arc weapon the whole time and just spam. And it kind of worked. Sometimes the games seem to want to force me to have to pick up a different weapon, which would piss me off.
But see, that's the Ghosts and Goblins stuff where you have to like jump over it and stuff. Yeah, dude. But I know what you mean. It's annoying.
Yeah. I mean, I figured it's just part of it. Like, okay, you've had your fun with the best weapon. Now you got to deal with this dinky little axe for a little while, and then maybe you'll find another one again.
Yeah. I mostly just save stated at the start of levels, because I wanted to get that like hard. Again, I think I just have muscle memory from Ghosts and Goblins on the Game Boy as a kid, because that game is pure bullshit. But anyway, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it enough, though, even if you had to abuse the save states. I recommend anyone try it out like that to get your save states going, have a good time. But if you have a flash cart, play it on the Game Boy, because it's really cool when you play it there. It feels like it's straight out of that era.
Does that still let you use save state like some multi-button shortcuts or something on a real hardware?
Well, on the real one, the Game Boy cart that I have, it's the oh god, what is the name of the official one? EverDrive. Yeah, you can just press the back of the cartridge and it opens up a menu for save states.
Oh, neat.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's a button on the actual card. It's really, really fun.
Is it just like a touch sensitive area on the cartridge?
No, it's literally so like the Game Boy Color cartridges, how they're like see through and they have like the little thing that sticks out. Like the original Game Boy had like the concave, and then this one's convex. Well, that's actually a button that you can press, and it clicks in really satisfyingly. And it's like quite easy to do because you just play and you just go like that, and it'll open up the save and load state section. Yeah, super dope. Because I think the button stuff I don't think the Game Boy, it just wouldn't work.
You just straight up don't have the buttons.
There's not enough buttons,
It just aren't.
Because Game Boy games used all those buttons, Anyway,
you got a few.
Yeah, that's Black Castle. Anyone else play this one? I know you didn't get Rick and Paula. I'm guessing, yeah, you didn't play this. All right,
No.
But you did play.
There's nothing to say about this game. I do have something to say about the next game, which is nothing to say.
Hey.
I'm rubbing off on you, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Maybe Matt, that's amazing. And About this game, you're supposed to be like on a date with this girl. It is a dating sim. You're supposed to be in a date with this girl, and the thing is that in each run you have to try to unlock different menu options by gaining letters. Initially, you have a few letters that you can use, and if you don't have all of the letters that an option needs, you cannot pick that option. And I have to say, I guess the game tried to be kind of cute, but it ended up being like kind of bullshit at the end, because for the one option that really, really matters and that the protagonist wants to say that he wants to confess pretty much, I think you need to have like all the letters.
Yeah, that's the whole point. You have to
Yeah.
get them all.
That's literally
You
the
have to
point.
get-
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to get all of them to win. It's kind of stupid, but it's fun.
Yeah, like I get the repetitiveness that comes with dating sims and visual novels, but I think they take it up a little bit too far with this one. The options, like the dialogue was cute, but I don't think it made it up like enough. It has like much of a payout to make everything worth it.
Yeah.
This,
Go ahead, Rick.
yeah. Go ahead. No, you're okay.
Oh, sure. I was just gonna say I didn't fully understand the concept of this one, because of the fact that like it's called Nothing to Say, and you had nothing to say, but then every time you finish, you just buy letters, and then you realize that all you have to do is just buy all the letters. So you start just like zooming through it until you get like it's just I don't know. I thought it was cute enough, and because it's short, it was fine. But I was a little bit like, oh, this is just like an idea that became a game. You know what I don't know, Rick. What do you
And in
think?
that way, it's a lot like Hot Pot Panic. Like,
Yeah.
there's a cool nugget in there, but there's not really enough around it to make it into a pearl. This is another one that I played in the extravaganza, so I didn't replay it. But I do have really positive memories of this. I did like the aesthetic as well, like the varying shades of blue, and then the letters contrasted in red, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember, but I think so.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I've got fond memories of this one. It left a really positive impression on me. And again, same as Hot Pot Panic, it's easy to be like really critical and nitpicky, but this is like a 5-minute free thing that
Yeah.
someone just made and put out into the world. And I think if you meet it at that level, like where it's at, there's absolutely fun to be had. Yeah. What did you think about this one, Jude?
Pretty similar thoughts. I like the concept. I think, in my opinion, the smallest tweak that would have made the biggest improvement would be to be a little bit less stingy on awarding you new letters. As you got to kind of that stuck point about 3/4 of the way through the game, because I don't know about how your playthroughs went, but around that point, there was just no more options for me, and the game will give you one credit basically to buy a new letter on a run where you don't unlock anything new. If you do unlock new dialogue, then you get like 2 to 3 to 4 letters sometimes. But I had maybe 7 or 8 runs that were just like one letter zooming through, like Alex said, and that wasn't fun. And then at the end, it's like, okay, yeah, they crafted some sentence that required all 26 letters to force you to buy them all, and that last little bit just kind of almost lost me. So I think if they had dialed that in a little bit, it probably would have flowed a bit better all throughout. But again, this was a 72-hour game jam game.
Yeah.
It worked well for the most part. It didn't have any bugs. The aesthetic was nice. I feel like I'm nitpicking a bit given what it is. So all in all, I think it succeeded what it tried to do.
I think it could be a really fun phone game where like you actually are like collecting letters over many dates, like if it wasn't the same one every time. I think that'd be kind of neat, like if he's trying to like figure it out until this person gains the confidence to actually have a conversation with someone. Like that to me, like if you were to try to develop this into a larger game, I think that would be kind of fun. But yeah, as it stands, it is just kind of like, all right, let's get the letters, let's go.
Or some kind of possible fail state. Like you really can't lose this game. You can run through as many times as it takes and then you win. It's like, okay, but
yay.
Do I really feel like I have that much agency if what I did didn't really matter? I just had to push a button until I got to the end,
Yeah.
So that it makes it have a little bit less impact, but maybe that's the vision. We don't ever really know exactly what the dev is intending, so it's hard to kind of guess at that.
Yeah, legit. Any other thoughts on this one, or should we move on to some bacon?
Let's definitely push on, but this is the last of the 3 games I haven't played. So
Oh.
I will be here, but I will be silent for the next little
I
bit.
think it might just be Dune and I then. I really like Cookie's Bakery. This is another Game Boy game. Again, Game Boy game. I like it. My only complaint with this game is that it's less of a game than I was kind of hoping it was going to be. Because you hear like Cookie's Bakery and you think like, oh, maybe it's a little bacon game, and kinda, it's more like there's a town you can walk around, but you can't really do anything. You can just talk to some people, and then you just go back to your bakery, and people come in and ask for like they give you like clues to a type of cookie that they're looking for, and you can check your recipe book. And so the game is really about like figuring out what kind of cookie they want, and then collecting all of the recipes for all the ingredients for it around your bakery, which is it's fine. Like the clues were like really obvious. To the point where I kind of hoped it would get like a little more challenging, but it was cute. I don't know. I can't rag on this game much. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I can't like praise it a bunch, but also it feels like it's good. It does what it sets out to do, and it's fun and it's cute looking. But there's not like that much to it, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. What did you think, dude?
Nice. Very similar thoughts. There was in your recipe book, there was about roughly 8 recipes, I think, for different types of cookies, like some butter cookies and some kind of like
Sugar.
checkerboard cookies, like very holiday-esque. It had kind of like a holiday Christmassy theme
Yeah.
to it. So it was kind of timely and nice to play in Itchmas. That was fun. But yeah, trying to figure out which recipe people were talking about was never a challenge. It was kind of more challenging to find where in your bakery each ingredient was and remember the ingredients from that bake, then put them all together. Even it was more just like an issue of got to go open the recipe book, check what you have, remember what you have. But it wasn't really trying to make you work that hard. I think the hardest part of the game was the little quiz at the end, which once you've done all the bakes, there's like a little winter festival with a quiz show about the cookies, and it's quizzing you on little nuggets of trivia that a character had said. So a little bit of a deeper cut. I missed one question on it, and I was like, damn it. Wish I had gotten that.
One as well, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Aesthetically, I thought it was okay. I didn't mind the Game Boy-ness of it. What I did mind was that it used like a fade to white all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm very often playing games like on my laptop in bed. My wife's asleep, baby's asleep. I'm just like trying to be low profile, and like these white flashes are just happening all the time. And just that bothered me. And then another thing was the audio was very, very low bit rate, like super crunchy, almost to the point of being painful sometimes. Just like really, really, really crunchy 8-bit kind of audio. Maybe I'm extra sensitive to that or something because I'm into music, but it just was not nice. So aesthetically, it worked except for when it was flashing bright lights at me and crunching my ears a little bit too hard.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I had less of the visual and audio stuff because I played it on a Game Boy, so that wasn't so bad. But I could feel that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's true to its inspirations, though. I mean, a lot of games use fade to black and fade to white as kind of a workaround for having to do a lot more animation. So I get it,
Yeah,
Yep.
especially on the Game Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's go to our last game, which was the highest voted game, and that was Resonance of the Ocean. First off, beautiful looking game.
Super pretty.
Yeah.
Kind of a hand-drawn aesthetic.
Yeah, it ended up being like I quite enjoyed it. It's weird. I'm like weirdly torn on this game because like I really did like it. I thought it was really beautiful. I just didn't really. The story didn't really resonate with me.
What story?
I know,
guys.
right?
Oh, without substance. I was very, very negative on this one.
It was more like poetry, I think. And so that to me, I was like, okay with, because like, and I'm also, I think, maybe a little like biased towards this growing up next to the ocean and stuff. It gives me a little bit of that, like that vibe. So
Maybe.
I think I was like a little primed for this game. But I did like the having to like, because you get to go around, you basically have to like mimic sounds that you're hearing from across the ocean with like objects that you find on the beach. And I enjoyed that. I liked when it got more complex, and I kind of wished it would get even more complex and like really make me try to like figure out what these sounds are. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wish I could have. The only thing I wish is that they would have made me play the sounds myself, because instead you just find them and they would just play out the right like instrumentation. And I was like, oh, let me do that. That's game. I want to play that game.
An extra interactivity would have absolutely elevated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, why don't you let me do that? But then again, I don't know. Maybe it would have turned into just too much of Simon Says. But whatever. That's a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I by the sounds of it, I think June was a reasonably big fan of this one as well. I just wasn't. Like, it's beautiful, absolutely, and the audio design is nice. It didn't really come together for me. It was like, oh, okay, I've got to go to the beach and grab a couple of bits and put them together, and then it will ask me to do it again. Like, it didn't really engage me. I think that's probably the best way to say it. I didn't find it engaging at all. Yeah, it just left me feeling really numb, ultimately. What about you, June? What did you think of this one?
Yeah. I put it in my top 3, but it's a very soft third. I have Dead Estate Classic and Angerfoot kind of equal, and they're both like runny, shooty games. So that's what my mood was. But Presence of the Ocean, yeah, it had potential. It was gorgeous. I probably rated it as highly as I did for aesthetic reasons, and just because I love sound and music as a gameplay concept in general. But yeah, it lacked something. It lacked maybe some interactivity. It lacked really anything to do with the story. Like, there was a kind of a broken down, abandoned shack on the island that you were on, and it hinted that there was going to be some sad story of what had happened there. Why it was locked at the beginning of the game, and it became unlocked. And it's like, okay, what? There's going to be something cool and sad happening here, or something. But nothing really happened. You don't know who your character was or what their motivations are. So it was more of just, I think it is just kind of an aesthetic game. It's not really too much deeper than that, perhaps. So, mainly on its marks in the aesthetics department, I thought it was well executed, and it really it looks like art. It looks like a painting, which none of the other games had. To be honest, a lot of the games this Itchmas didn't really tickle my fancy too hard. So this being my third place, I kind of had to look for one to put for third place. But yeah, pretty. Did I say it was pretty yet? I thought it was nice looking game.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, it was beautiful, and that's kind of what got me about it, right? Like, I was like, oh yeah, it's gorgeous. And I don't know, I think it's also the last one, so there might be a little bit of a bias there, but that's kind of the point too, though, right? Like, of all the games we played, this was the one where I was like, wow, this is something. Like, there is some real artistry in this. I wish the gameplay matched it a bit more, but yeah.
Yeah, and when you think that a lot of these are solo dev projects with only a couple exceptions, like I think Dead Estate and Angerfoot and Marie's Room, for the most part, this is one person's vision. And as someone who's dabbled in game development and plans to do more in the near future, you really have your strengths and weaknesses, right? And if your strength is art design and drawing, then you're going to lean hard into that. And I think that's what happened here. Yeah. And that's okay. That's their statement.
That's how it goes. Sick. Well, those were the 15 games of Itchmas. And they were very lovely. Last year, Dune, you had stats. I don't know. Do you have Itchmas stats this year? I just seeing this on my notes from last year. Um,
I have no recollection of these stats. What are these stats you speak of?
I have no idea. But here, I'm gonna add something in here as like a separate thing. Uh,
I can
what?
I can tell you some bingo stats, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we could do that a bit. I was gonna mention because I started playing games that weren't on the list. I basically I played Flies in a Jar. Out of all the ones that I think I touched, that's the one that I remember playing. That was like also one that was recommended, but didn't make it into it. And that one is great. It is like a really weird, creepy, short horror game. It's like a puzzle escape game sort of thing, and I really thought it's it's kind of funny, and it's pretty creepy actually. And you're like a security, you're like monitoring these security screens, and there are these flies that are in a jar, and you have to make sure that they never escape the jar, and everything goes from there. And I thought it was dope, so play that one. It's better than most of the games in Itchmas, actually. I think. For me,
That's always kind of the thing. It's like, oh, you're kind of pining for what could have been, because there's
Yeah.
some games that just really jump out at you that you want to go back and play. But do you really want to go back and play them when they're a toss up compared to what you've already got on your humongous backlog, right? So
exactly.
some of the, but you know what though, Itchmas comes around again, and
Yeah.
we've had games that won this time that were nominees that didn't win either in Itchmas in July or last Christmas Itchmas. So
Exactly.
it'll get another chance.
You never know. It could come right back. You never know.
Yeah.
um
Okay, well, I've got a few quick bingo stats,
nice.
which was, it was kind of a little side game within the game. So we had 4 players, myself, Eric T-Bar, Seaver, and Cockroach says, who TF is Matt, who has been on the pod.
Mhm.
And so I felt a little dirty because I ended up winning, and I was the one that came up with the bingo game. So it's like, hey, I win my own game. But although I won only in terms of getting the most possible bingos. So we did a 4x4 square card. So 10 was the maximum possible number of bingos you could get. And because we started getting bingos so fast, Eric T-Bar was the first to bingo on day 2.
Wow.
So that tells you how spot on a lot of these squares were. I bingoed next, then Seaver, and then Cock. Actually, he deserves like a special prize for getting the most possible squares filled without getting a bingo in any direction. He had like 75% of his card filled out, but no bingos. So that was fun. It was kind of fun to be silly about that. I think we can maybe expand that next year. If I remember correctly, I got the idea for that like the day voting ended or the day before or something. It was really last minute kind of thing. I think with a little bit more time for people to think about it, we could have that be fun and maybe rethink the rules a little bit, because I don't know if it worked so well having so many bingos. Like maybe we should expand to 5x5 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Got some time to think about it.
I think what would be neat is making people make their bingo cards before the nominations even start. Like do a bingo card in November or
That's a
something.
good idea.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then they really have to, because like you can't really fix it, right? Because you can put 3 games that maybe match your bingo in, but people still have to vote on those, right, to like get it good.
Yeah.
It might influence people's
you-
voting, but I doubt it. I don't know.
I'd say it influenced my voting a hair. I had some categories about like anime characters on the cover art, or just silly stuff like that. So I definitely voted for some that I didn't want to play that just would have given me a bingo. But hey, did you say the results of the voting for like people's favorite of the
Yes,
games
I
that we
did,
played?
and that's actually
Oh.
the next part. So
Oh,
let's see here, because we're going to talk about our favorites and also the audience's favorites. So why don't I first just we'll do the audience favorites first, actually. So we do this every year. It's like ranked choice voting. This time I just did like the number 1, but I have basically the top 3 here. Residents of the Ocean like took it hard. Like it is first place by a mile, which I think is really impressive. So it went basically Residents of the Ocean. Then you had 2 rectangles. Hot Pot Panic came in 3rd. Then it was Mary's Room. Well, basically, okay. So first and second place were like very clear. Residents of the Ocean, 2 triangles. And then basically third place is like a 5-way tie between Hot Pot Panic, Mary's Room, Angerfoot, The Year After, and We Become What We Behold, which to me kind of makes sense. Like those 5 games, I'm like, yeah, those are like, I don't know. It just kind of makes sense to me that those would be the ones that kind of pop out there. And then like
Appeal to some different styles there, like that. I think that's kind of like the good game tier, you know?
yeah.
Good, but not like super impactful game tier, or not as appealing to everybody that played, you know?
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Residents of the Ocean kind of came out like very high on top. Could have again been influenced by the fact that it was the final game to be released and might have been really like sharp in people's minds, but I also think it was a very good game. Impressive, like 2 Rectangles was the second game released, and it clearly left an impact on people.
I think it's probably worth echoing what June said, because I actually think I agree. Across the 15 games, not the strongest lineup we could have had in terms of overall quality. And I think when you look at a game like two rectangles, feels weird that that's what we're calling it, but there we are. Like, it's a good game. It's not a great game, and I think in a stronger year, probably doesn't get anywhere near the top 3. But there are a lot of games that had very particular flaws, or were mediocre, or were null. And as such, there was more space for it to sort of creep into that podium place.
And I think what's interesting about this year, it's like last year, I think there were stronger quality games, but they were also longer games. And so like this year, I think one of the strengths of this year is that the games weren't necessarily as good. I don't think. I still remember a lot of the games that we played last year, but sure as shit was a lot quicker to get through, and I didn't mind that one bit. I was like, this is a busy month. I was totally fine with that. I'm like, I'll take slightly reduced quality for quick any day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, it's December for sure. And then game of the month, like traditional game of the month was Persona 5 Royal, which is not a short game. In fact, it's probably one of the longest games ever.
God, I still need to play it.
I'm about 15 hours through. I've been poking at it since beginning of December very slowly.
So you're just at the tutorial, right?
I don't know. I'm sure there's still going to be introducing things. I'm in the second dungeon. I'll say the second month.
The first dungeon is basically a tutorial dungeon, like.
Well, not the intro sequence dungeon. I'm in the second proper dungeon. There's an intro sequence, and then there's a real game. Right?
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll
We're
get
getting
back to you with that later. I played like 8 hours in and didn't get out to what I thought was the first dungeon. Anyway, that's besides the point.
Well, why don't we talk about ours too, as we're discussing the poll there? I mean, I don't think it's super surprising. Like, I'm not going to go into crazy depth with this, but like my list is like, I guess, and this would be in the order for me. Angerfoot number 1 for sure. I thought that was dope. Black Castle is my number 2 because it was nostalgia hit perfect, and then I had Residents of the Ocean as my number 3. That was kind of my little charting there. I'm very much gameplay first, clearly, except for Residents of the Ocean. It kind of snuck in there.
It got nowhere near it for me. I also led with Angerfoot. I think that's got such potential, and that shone through in the slice that's available on Itch. We Become What We Behold was second for me. I think that absolutely still stands up. And then 2 rectangles filling the podium at third place.
Nice.
So for me, it was such a difficult decision to know which 3 games.
What game?
It's hard to whittle down from 4. Yeah.
Well, so for me, first place was Hot Pot Panic. Not that it has a lot of competition. 2 rectangles and Nothing to Say.
Nice. All great games. And Dune, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I think first is kind of a tie between Dead Estate Classic and Angerfoot, although I did technically retire Angerfoot while I beat Dead Estate Classic, which is not an indication of the quality, but I'll just say those are tied for first. I put Residents of the Ocean as my third. It's a distant third, and honestly, as we talk about it more, I think 2 rectangles is pretty much neck and neck with it for me, so you could interchange either of those, and from there, what I thought were better kind of dropped off pretty hard after that.
Yeah, I think maybe The Year After would tie with Residents of the Ocean for me, actually. It's just because I played it last year that like it's not so fresh in my mind. I think I probably should have just come back onto it and tried it out. But I know it's funny. I felt stronger about Residents of the Ocean until we started talking about it, and then I'm like, Maybe I didn't feel that good about it. And then it won the freaking poll. That's why I was kind of shocked when it won. I was like, really? Okay.
You reminded me of a conversation we had during the first time I came on as a guest. We were talking about, our preferences in games, and it was just that whole like, do graphics really matter? Does sound really matter? And I mean, obviously, we all like gameplay, and you were just saying how you're really big into gameplay heavy games with these preferences. But you also said, well, the graphics and the sound are the shit I got to look at and listen to. So, I mean, yeah, they matter.
Right?
The Resonance of the Ocean is proof of
bears
that.
it out, yeah.
I don't know. And like, even if the gameplay wasn't so strong, I was like, it's fucking pretty. It feels good and it sounds nice. You know what? Yeah, it does kind of hit that. Yeah. It's funny, right? Because, yeah, I don't know. But it does make me, God, anyway, I was just thinking about last year too. It can be, this can be hit and miss, but it's always so much fun just to get to play all these games. Because it feels like, the reason I think I like Itchmas is that I would never fucking play any of these games. I don't know if,
No, I mean, I would probably play Angerfoot and Dead Estate because that's like we talked about there a little bit more. Like, I don't want to say a real game or not a real game, but they have been expanded and were developed by a team as a product for sale, so it has that amount of scope and polish. But yeah, most of the fun of it, at least for me, is the discussion and the debate and seeing everyone's different opinions and just kind of all having a game experience together. And they're all little bite-sized ones for the most part. And the barrier of entry is really, really low because, they're free. They're pretty low spec for the most part. A lot of them run on a browser. So they're just like, it's just so much more inclusive than a typical game of the month. So you just get all these different little experiences. And even when they're bad, it's just so fun to beat up on them,
Yeah, honestly.
But not too hard because a lot of them are, solo dev game jam type things. So we're respectful with our beating up, but
Yes,
still.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the reality too. It's like, it's a free game, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not like, oh God, how could you waste my time? Because like, whatever, I nope out the minute I don't like it. So it's not that big of a deal. But I think this also really does show, and it's the same with Game of the Month sometimes, but even more with Itchmas, I think, just the complete variety of interests and likes that are like the community has in terms of games and the way they play, right? Like, I think on the pod, we understand very much what we're into. And so seeing what ends up getting picked every year, it really is like, I'm like, what game's going to be next? Cause I don't fucking know. Like, there's such a mixture of, of just, what was preferences? That's it.
I was surprised quite a bit because there were several games that, based on last year, I thought would get voted. Like, we had a bunch of horror games in the mix for nominees that didn't make it through, and some of them looked pretty good. And we had a ton of horror games last year, so I thought, oh yeah, we're clearly going to have at least a few of those. But aside from Kuro, I think that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So there was definitely some surprises to be had, which, like you said, is part of the fun.
Yeah. It also probably doesn't help that I think this was, I don't know, for me personally, it was a way busier year than the year before. So I had a little less time to kind of be involved as it was happening. But that's the nature of the game, right? Sometimes you got lots of time. Other times you're like, I got nothing.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think that's it. We went through it all. We did pretty darn good there. Thank you again for coming on and joining us, dude. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Hopefully we'll do many more Itchmases to come.
I hope so. I was a little worried just because being a recently new-ish dad and just all the stuff happening, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to find the time to participate again this year. But I'm really happy I did, and I think it's a nice little thing that the community has embraced. So it's going to be a fun one next year too, and we do a little mini one in July as well for Itchmas in July. So we've got that coming up in 6 months or so. There you go.
I'm gonna try to. Hopefully, I can do it. I didn't get to do it this year, but July is just crazy town. But
you're just a busy person. Sounds
I am,
like,
dude.
Mr.
I got a lot of jobs that all converge on each other very often.
Yeah,
but that treat, no time to take it down so much. That's just how packed the schedule is.
That's legit, dude.
There you
legit.
Go.
So much teaching. All right. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we have another special episode with a guest who's been on many a time as well. Stay tuned for that. I guess we can just tell them what we're going to do. We're going to do a Fantasy Critic League wrap up for 2022. Rick did so well in the Fantasy Critic League, and he's going to tell us about his winning strategy.
My winning
for
strategy
coming in dead last.
to empower everyone else by making myself the scapegoat. What I've really done is a community service this year. Just passed.
I don't think you're even in this year, right? You
I probably missed the window by now, so no.
You did,
no.
yeah. You're not in 2023, so oh well.
I'm sure I'll be equally as involved.
Yeah, because hold on, what did you get for? Yeah, you were at -10 last year. Anyway, let's talk about that next year. Rick just had a light. That's all. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, enough for this.